If you're watching from here, or here, or here, this is the biggest river in Western Canada. It's huge, it's undammed. It runs from the mountains through our most densely populated urban areas, and it's all natural, baby. And that makes it pretty special. But if we're not careful, it could look like this down the road, a maze of concrete passages completely devoid of biodiversity. That's what a new study from Fraser University is worried about.
So the paper came about because there was a real need in the community to have a compilation of what knowledge we have around the geology and evolution of the Fraser Delta and Fraser River. Yeah, there's a couple things that really make the Fraser stand out. The first is actually how young it is. It's only about 9,500 years old. It's also a major salmon fishery. And so when people were looking to harvest salmon back in the early part of the 1900s, there was a push to not dam any of the tributaries along the Fraser River. And so it remains one of the largest rivers in the world that's actually almost completely undammed along its entire length, which means the sedimentation that happens in the delta reflects natural processes that are active in the catchment area.
The unsung hero of the Fraser River, the sediment. That's all of the sand, rocks, minerals that are transported down the river and deposited in a new location. And it's what's protecting the river from climate change.
Deltas are basically nature's sandcastle. They are the accumulation of sediment at the coastline. So rivers capture sediment in the catchment area and transport it to where it empties into the ocean. And so when the river enters the ocean, the flow slows down significantly, and that sediment is dumped. One of the biggest issues we have right now is the fact that we are dealing with a warming Earth. Those raising sea levels are going to then start to increase water levels in the Strait of Georgia. As we see that, the river's natural response is to aggregate, so we actually build sediment onto the delta itself, and we raise the whole surface of it in response to rising sea levels. Without sediment, the delta is going to shrink.
In order to protect the river from climate change, we have to protect the sediment. And in order to protect the sediment, we have to know what we're dealing with.
So in most parts of the world, major river systems like this would actually have a monitoring program where they measure the amount of sediment coming down the river, and they know how much sediment is being dredged. In the Fraser situation, we're making estimates and guesses, but we don't actually fully know how much sediment is being dredged out of the river.
The two greatest threats to losing sediment in our river is, number one, the impact of development projects, which can constrain the path of the river, and number two, the lack of sediment actually coming down from the mountains, which is made worse by dredging. That's the straight up removal of sediments to help ships pass through more easily. But the problem is, we just don't know how much we've lost, how much we have left, and the true impacts of these actions. We just don't have the data.
So if we don't actually manage delta sediment in the river, what ends up happening is we don't get enough sediment out onto the front of the delta. What ends up happening then is we erode out the salt marshes, and now we start to have water moving up right against the dikes. So the worst case scenario is that we remove a lot of those natural environments on the front of the delta itself. We then have to build up the dikes to protect the urban areas in behind them. So we lose our natural habitats, and we don't actually have a way for us to protect against increased wave activity, increased chance of flooding as a result of large storms and big tides.
We have to think about the kind of river delta we want in the future.